Ms. Shields.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Tina Shields. I'm the Water Department Manager at Imperial Irrigation District and have about 30 years experience working in these large-scale water conservation and planning areas as well as on Colorado River issues. Next slide, please. So as you heard earlier from Chairman Hamby, who also serves on IID's board, IID is the largest irrigation district in the nation. We divert Colorado River water through Imperial Dam and through 6 desilting basins to drop out the sediments to deliver supplies first to the Yuma and Mexico region. The water then goes into the All-American Canal, which is the red line along the bottom of this, and travels about 85 miles west to the Imperial Irrigation District service area. We manage a 3.1 million acre-foot entitlement. That's a consumptive use cap during the term of the QSA. It actually has been larger in years past, and that includes about 2.6 million acre-feet of the present perfected senior water rights that were discussed earlier. That water is used to support our communities and our farms. Next slide. We have the benefit of a year-round growing season within the Imperial Irrigation District, and with that sunshine and the water supplies from the Colorado River, we're able to produce significant vegetable and forage crops that are used to feed the nation and create this reliable food supply that was discussed earlier. We have prime agricultural land. We have farmers that have ability to use that water in a very efficient manner and achieve significant crop yields well in excess of other areas that have more limited seasons. If you eat beef, cheese, pasta, steak, that food supply comes from the food and the forage crops that we grow in our area, either directly or indirectly. And it's really to the kudos to our farmers and our farm workers and our service providers to those regional economies that have benefited and provided these food supplies for us. Next slide. So there are many unique aspects to the Imperial Valley. We have blazing hot summers you've all heard about. We have a very large-scale agricultural landscape. But after our diverse and tight-knit community, what really makes this system what you see here in this green aerial imagery is the 3,000 miles of open channel gravity flow conveyance system that move this Colorado River water to and through our community. This conveyance system is very important to us because the Colorado River is our only source of water. If we lose the Colorado River, our community ceases to exist, and that's really not an exaggeration. We don't have usable groundwater. We don't have state water project supplies or any way to get that water there. We are sort of a one-horse show when it comes to water supplies, and so we're very protective of that resource and very interested in how these multi-state discussions turn out in the future. Next slide, please. So our strategic plan at IID identifies our primary mission as providing reliable, efficient, and affordably priced service. But more importantly, it codifies our goals to protect the water rights within our community for the sustained benefit of our economy and the regional economy as well. However, since the late 1980s, our water delivery business has been really expanded to include a secondary function, and that's the implementation of these large-scale conservation planning partnerships with the urban areas. Mr. Harris mentioned the nation's largest ag-to-urban water transfer, the quantification settlement agreement. And as Chairman Hamby mentioned, and you can see from this graph, we're generating about 500,000 acre-feet a year through active conservation and through non-fallowing, which is really important to our community, is we want to keep using that water. We want to be more efficient. We want to have these partnerships, but not by affecting our local community and putting people out of work. So that's very critical to us. Next slide, please. Beginning in 1989 was our first water conservation transfer program with Metropolitan. Metropolitan funded large-scale investments in our system. You see some pictures here of concrete lining and reservoirs and a new water control center. With these conservation opportunities, we are able to conserve a little over 100,000 acre-feet a year that is then diverted by Metropolitan and used within their service area to help create this water supply reliability within California and also on the Colorado River. Next slide. A decade later, we expanded this. Our agency entered into negotiations with San Diego County Water Authority. Those got bogged down a little bit in some litigation and complexities, but eventually in 2003, with the authorization of the QSA, not only was the San Diego transfer put into effect, but an additional transfer with Coachella Valley Water District to total another 300,000 acre-feet. And again, we've used the funding provided by these agencies to make our system more advanced. We've brought in technology, computers. We have a gravity flow system, which is pretty awesome because it doesn't require pumping and large-scale power, and it's very cost-effective. But we've been able to modernize that. We've also been able to provide growers direct payments so that they can then take that funding and implement field level conservation measures. So a large scale conversion from flood irrigation to drip systems, tailwater return systems, linear move systems. So it's a very efficient way of getting water on the crop and still maintaining the active salt balance on the field so that we have leaching that occurs to help remove those salts. Next slide. So in total, because of these transfers and these active conservation efforts, we've been able to conserve significant volumes of water. The last 2 decades alone, over 7.2 million acre-feet has been generated by IID and its farmers. Our on-farm program is a developing program. It's very popular in the valley because it enables farmers to do things that on their own they wouldn't be able to do, but they still continue to farm, and that's really important to us. Next slide. We mentioned earlier the Salton Sea, so this is sort of our rock and a hard place on these transfers. As we implement the efficiency conservation measures, it causes a direct reduction in the water that ran off the tail end of the fields into the Salton Sea and has created these large-scale reductions in inflow, which then causes the sea to recede and this playa to be exposed. So far we've had about 30,000 acres of land exposed that used to be underwater. It's very concerning to us when the high winds occur about the potential for dust emissions. So we've seen significant progress as of late from Secretary Crowfoot's team, their implementations efforts at the Salton Sea with their management program. At the south end of the sea in this orange area, they're beginning to construct a 4,100 acre species conservation habitat project, a big wetlands project, and looking to double that in size with the additional funding from reclamation. So we're really focused on identifying the lands that are the most emissive and targeting those for these dust control measures. The sea salinity is also a challenge because the fish are unable to reproduce, and that's sort of the restaurant for the birds. So we have really a changing environment that's a real challenge to say, how do we address this? And for the state to look at long term, we're doing piecemeal projects, but we need to come up with an overall plan about what we envision the sea being in the future. So it's kind of a science experiment out there, but we've seen so much progress lately from where we were a dozen years ago, and we're really looking forward to seeing those projects have water diverted into them. The next slide, please. So we mentioned earlier the voluntary conservation proposal that California put forth. Of that 400,000 acre-feet a year, IID will be contributing about 250,000 acre-feet. That is going to jump our conservation from about 16% of our water supply to about 24% of our water supply. So it's really going to be a heavy lift for our community. We're trying as much as possible to prioritize these efficiency conservation measures, but we know you can only do so much in such a short period of time. Our second sort of line of defense to generate this water is probably going to be a deficit irrigation program. So as Director Hamby mentioned, if we don't water some Bermuda fields for 2 or 3 months in the summer, we lose a couple cuttings, we provide some compensation to growers that volunteer for those programs, but you don't have a larger scale economic impact on the farm service providers. Ultimately, we'll probably, to get that level of volume, have to implement a fallowing program. We have done this in years past, but they've been strictly prohibited in recent years. We call them the F word because it's such an impact on our community and we really want to avoid it. But if that's what's necessary to address the long-term issues at the Salton Sea, we're willing to look at doing that in the near term because that resource is so important to us. And I think I'll conclude my remarks, but thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.